When we think of fairy tales, we think of Disney's animation films, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Cinderella, The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, and more. Those highly commercialized animations have given us incredible entertainment with their beautiful artwork, sweet music, sensitive plots, and moral lessons. However, what I want to talk about here today is the original fairy tales told through time. They're not to teach us a moral lesson, but to show us the world as is, the human condition in its most raw and pure form, kind, cruel, violent, treacherous, courageous, and in one breath. It is important that we enjoy Disney's animation stories, but study and read the original fairy tales. While Disney makes every fairy tale a love story, injects it with heroes and villains, characters in fairy tales are not necessarily that simple or easily identifiable. In traditional fairy tales, the protagonists usually have no names because they represent you and me. They represent every human being, our emotions, our thoughts, our triumphs and defeats. They represent the growth of our soul. Many of the characters don't have a distinct appearance. We don't know the color of their skin, nor their hair. For example, in The Little Mermaid, the Sea King has 6 daughters. Beautiful children, but the youngest was the prettiest of them all. Her skin was as bright and pure as a rose leaf. Her eyes were as blue as the deepest lake. And in Beauty and the Beast, there was once a very rich merchant. His daughters were extremely handsome, especially the youngest. When she was little, everybody admired her and called her the Little Beauty. Not having a distinct appearance helps us to connect with any of the heroes and characters in fairy tales. That's why these stories can transcend time and cross cultures. In fairy tales, our hero goes on his or her own journey. He or she will encounter incredible challenges, often horrific. Fairy tales will go into gruesome details of killings, murders, rape, or even cannibalism. The heroes will encounter them all. In the end, they will survive and become smarter and stronger. I would like to discuss 2 stories and their plots that Disney has omitted from the original ones and why they're important lessons to learn. The first story is Beauty and the Beast. Disney's Beauty and the Beast comes from the French story La Belle et la Bête by Gabriel Suzanne Bardot de Villeneuve. The story begins with Beauty's father as a rich merchant. He has many children, 6 boys and 6 girls. Beauty is the youngest daughter. A reverse of fortune causes them to lose all their wealth. They have lost everything in a house fire, including all their accounts, and everything relates to their businesses. From an opulent lifestyle since birth, the family fell into abject poverty. The father had nothing left but a small country house far away from the city. When people have discovered that the father's fortune is no longer there, the girls' suitors all have disappeared. Their friends cease to know them. They're insulted by their neighbors. Finally, they have to move to the countryside, and the children have to take on responsibilities. In the countryside, the boys divide their hard work among themselves. As for Beauty, she was upset at the beginning, but eventually learned to deal with her father's misfortune. Her sisters had a hard time adjusting to a lifestyle where there are no more servants waiting for them and they have to do their daily work. Right at the beginning of the story, the author brought to us a serious topic, the fall from wealth to poverty. How should one deal with that and begins to work hard and persevere? The story also reminds us to choose our friends carefully, identify and avoid fair weather friends. 2 years later, The father receives a note that one of his lost vessels arrives at the seaport, loaded with wealth. However, when he gets to the great port, his partners split his goods and disposed his vessels. He became poorer than he was before. Resigned to deeper poverty, he embarks on a journey home and encounters a beautiful palace where he was offered food and warmth. Upon stealing a single rose for beauty, he meets Beast, who demands the father to send one of his daughters to him, or the father would be killed. After he gets home, he told his daughters about Beast. None other than Beauty was willing to go to the palace to save her father. After Beauty arrives at the palace, she begins to have a dream every night. A handsome young man who is in love with her. He reminds Beauty not to judge him by the way he looks. Judge me by how compatible I am for you. With the wealth given by Beast, Beauty's father has bought a new house and was grateful for his kindness. Discovering in the Beast a noble mind but an ugly body, her father advises Beauty to marry him. He assures her that she will be happy. It's better to have an amiable husband than a handsome one. How many girls are married to good-looking brutes? Beauty is not only reminded repeatedly every day by the young boy in her dream, but over and over again by her father not to judge a person by his appearance, but by his character and compatibility. Beauty and the Beast is a typical fairy tale love story, putting two unlikely characters together in the most stressful circumstances to challenge them to learn about each other through dramatic events. From mutual rejection to understanding, they finally develop deeper appreciation and love for each other. These are the lessons we cannot afford to omit in life. The second story is The Little Mermaid by Hans Christian Andersen. The Little Mermaid has a widower father, but a grandmother who helps her father to raise her. Grandparents are an important childhood relationship for young children. They're great assets in a family to help raise younger children, manage the household with wisdom and love. Many times they become the counselor for the children's inner self. The Little Mermaid is fascinated about the human world from stories told by her grandmother and from her older sisters who have gone above water to see the human world. But her motivation of wanting to live in a life on land is a little more complex than Ariel's. Mermaids are not allowed to look above water until they reach 15 years old. At this point, the Little Mermaid is only 10, so she had to wait for her time. The story begins here to warn us, beware of humans, and one must wait to be mature enough to deal with them. Eventually, the Little Mermaid turns 15, and she was able to see the human world. She sees a prince for the first time at a birthday party on a ship. A storm comes, the ship sank, the humans on the board died. Fortunately, the Little Mermaid saves the prince and leaves his unconscious body on the seashore. When she got back to her family, the Little Mermaid curiously asked her grandmother that if she doesn't save the prince, what would happen when he dies? The answer was very important. Even though mermaids can live for over 300 years, which is much longer than humans, but mermaids, unlike humans, don't have an immortal soul. Instead of ascending to heaven, they simply dissolve into sea foam and cease to exist. This frightens the Little Mermaid. She likes the human solution much better. But what can she do? The grandmother tells her if a mermaid can get a human to love her and marry her, then she will be given a soul of her own, and that soul will give her an eternal existence. The Little Mermaid goes to the sea witch and asks her how she can become human. In the original story, the sea witch is a neutral enabler, not a fierce antagonist. She's not interested in destroying the Little Mermaid nor the prince. There is no villain in Andersen's story. The sea witch creates a drought and gives her a potion to make her human, and tells the little mermaid the sacrifice she has to make. First, she would be given human legs, but the transformation of her tail would feel like sword passing through her, and every step she takes will feel like she's walking on knives, and her feet will bleed. Second, she will never become a mermaid again, and if the prince marries someone else, she will die the next morning. Finally, the sea witch will cut off her tongue, and she will lose her voice. So eager to have an eternal soul, the little mermaid drinks the potion and undergoes a painful and brutal transformation to be human. The prince finds her on the seashore the next morning. However, the prince does not fall in love with her. The prince finds the little mermaid awkward because she cannot talk and she has no idea how the human world works. Finally, he falls in love with the princess and marries her. The wedding began, and the last day of Little Mermaid's life approaches. She not only participates in the wedding, she also has to dance in the reception with the excruciating pain in her legs. The next morning, the little mermaid went to the edge of the ship to take a last look of the ocean before she dies. At this moment, her sisters appear at the ocean surface. They have traded their hair with the sea witch for a magic knife. If the little mermaid stabs the prince into the heart and lets his blood drip onto her feet, she could become a mermaid again. The little mermaid is terrified of the mermaid's afterlife and desperately wants to live, but she also loves the prince. She could not kill him. She throws the magic knife into the ocean and jumps overboard, expecting to dissolve into sea foam. Instead, she becomes a daughter of the air, and she can earn herself an eternal soul through doing good deeds. Heaven has granted her wish. The little mermaid's curiosity with the human world draws her to the world of the prince. Fascinated by this world, by the unknown and by the forbidden, she acts upon her curiosity. She is unhappy with the limited opportunity given to a mermaid. She is desperate to broaden her horizon. What she sees on Earth stimulates her desire for challenge and change. She wants to explore the world and to discover more. Although the little mermaid does not receive the love that she expects, but has no resentment for the prince, nor regrets for her own decisions, all the risks she takes brings her closer to her quest. The little mermaid was adventurous, curious, and willing to confront her fears. She embarks on a hero's journey and lives a life she has never known before. Andersen's ending was powerful because now she does not need to rely on the prince to acquire an eternal soul. Through sacrifice and kindness, she was able to do it by herself. The Little Mermaid is not a love story, but a story about transformation and transcendence. The original story of The Little Mermaid celebrates curiosity, adventure, kindness, and sacrifice. Austrian psychologist Bruno Bettelheim has said, "Each fairy tale is a magic mirror which reflects some aspects of our inner world and of the steps required by our evolution from immaturity to maturity." For those who immerse themselves in what the fairy tale has to communicate, it becomes a deep, quiet pool, which at first seems to reflect only our own image. But behind it, we soon discover the inner turmoil of our soul, its depth and ways to gain peace within ourselves and with the world, which is the reward of our struggle. It's important that we read and reread the original fairy tales beyond Disney to let the stories help us to grow and help us to deal with the many struggles in our growth.